And welcome to today's episode of Health University. We are so glad you're here. And today I'm delighted to have my friend and colleague, Claudia Muehlenweg. Did I say that properly?
You did a great job, Susan.
Wonderful. Claudia is a health vision coach who I've known for several years, and I've even done some work with Claudia, and her work is phenomenal. And the reason we're going to have this conversation today is I know we've been talking a lot about ovaries and uterus and menstrual cycles and so on and so forth, but we are more than that. And even when we're undergoing a fertility journey, we want to remember the various ways in which we can attend to our whole health, which then obviously extends to our fertile health. So I'm going to give Claudia an opportunity to introduce herself because I know that I will miss important parts. So Claudia, please welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me in this conversation because obviously I'm not a hormone or ovary specialist, but I focus on vision. And the reason I'm doing this is because I had vision problems. I got my first pair of glasses at the age of 3 years old, and they really made my whole childhood and young adulthood miserable because when I was born back in the day, in the 60s to be more specific, the glasses weren't cool, right? I was the only child in my class with glasses. I was bullied, I was teased, I really didn't have any friends. And they also kept, playing on the playground, or just even later when I did sports, they fogged up or they fell down or they broke. So I was really from an early age determined to figure out a way to improve my vision. And everybody was like, you can't do that. But I ended up being so persistent. That was before Google or anything. I went to bookstores and the library and I found a book on vision improvement. And that got me really started with understanding that we can have a choice in how well we can see. Now, it took me a little while to get out of my glasses, and I was out of glass. I was back in glasses in my 30s. I'm going to skip over all the parts. But when I was back in glasses in my late 30s into early 40s, I thought at that point, okay, it's age, right? It's like everybody tells you, and I was farsighted already as a child. So it's like, okay, everybody knows that you need reading glasses. It's just normal. And then one night I had this epiphany where after wearing the glasses for a while, I took them off and my vision was so blurry, like worse than it was before I put them on. I was like, this does not feel right. And then I found that book again that I still had somewhere in a hidden drawer. And I
Oh.
started practicing this again. And at that point, I needed a coach. Long story short, it's been almost 20 years that I haven't worn glasses.
That is an amazing story. And I, like you, Claudia, share that early childhood experience. I began wearing glasses at age 4 and was told that, my astigmatism was so severe, the doctors would call other doctors in to say, you've got to see this, because apparently my eye shape was so much more like a football than a basketball. And so I have just come to believe and have become dependent upon glasses as time progresses. And I'm older than you are. So time has progressed and now
You look great.
I am. And so I'm very interested personally, and I know the listening audience, who are all now, especially since the last 4 years, much more addicted to or attached to Zoom, the computer. We're not getting out the way we used to and using our vision differently. So I want to hear more from you about, and I know they want to hear more from you about like that specifically. So, but let's start with the blurry vision. What is the cause of blurry vision then?
So I mean, it sounds a little oversimplified, but it's stress.
Mhm.
And stress can be physical, right? It could be like some injuries too, like concussions or head injuries. But in many cases, it's mental or emotional. And especially as children, we are resilient, but at the same time, when we are stressed, and that, and your audience knows that we are in the sympathetic fight or flight mode. Our vision is never good. Our pupils are constricted, our heart rate, all these kind of physiological side effects. But if we don't feel safe in our environment, and that could be me being bullied in school, or maybe
Mhm.
you have a family that doesn't feel good, or a
Mhm.
parent, or whatever it is, even as you get older, when we don't feel safe, we cannot relax. And when we cannot relax, so we're on that constant kind of like paying attention, kind of being careful level, we our vision will go downhill. And then glasses really manifest that because now it's kind of you put a pill on it, right? So now
Mhm.
we are allowed to be scared and afraid, and maybe we're straining or we're struggling with learning. That could be another thing, that we're struggling with learning. So there's a stress involved in kind of going to school beyond the social aspects. And so, and emotionally too, like it could just be maybe we feel alone or we're
Mhm.
sad about something or worried or again. So stress might sound like a kind of catch-all phrase, but it really comes down to that. And when I do ask my clients, like, what did happen like 1, 2 years before you got your first pair of glasses? And you and I, we were really young, but
Yes.
most people like, yeah, my parents divorced, or we moved a
Mhm.
lot, or my grandma died, or I got bullied, or when they got it in their 30s or 40s, we switched from analog to computer, and I was just, whatever it was, but there was something in your life that caused you an extreme amount of stress.
Gotcha. And actually this does make perfect sense because we are bombarded with stress, whether we associate it as stressful or not. But I think what I'm hearing you say is when we are stressed, our pupils need to constrict in order for us to have that singular focus on perhaps the saber-toothed tiger if we're going back into our fight or flight kind of mode.
Actually,
And then
sorry,
we put the glasses on.
yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of missed that. It's the pupils dilate. I'm
Oh, they
sorry.
dilate.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we were stressed, the pupils dilate, the peripheral vision shuts down, our blood pressure goes up, all those kind of things. So in order, the pupils are actually relaxed when they are small.
Uh-huh.
And so it takes muscular effort to dilate the pupils. And that happens, for instance, when at night, just to receive more light. But when we are relaxed, the pupils are kind of small, so we would call them maybe constricted. And you might think that takes more muscular effort, but it's the other way around. So
Interesting.
the muscles contract and the pupils open up when we are stressed or when it's dark, of course.
Okay. All right. Well, is there any time that you would say that it is a good idea to wear glasses or sunglasses or blue light blockers or any of these kind of things?
That is a great question. So, I mean, at the end of the day, when everything is blurry, we're not learning and we're not curious and our brain doesn't get interesting input. So glasses could definitely be a way. Like when I work with my clients, for instance, I get them if they can't see clearly enough. And this is also referring to different distances, right?
Mhm,
We will, but then reduce the glasses. So we
mhm.
get them out of the full strength prescription glass. Like think of like from a cast on your arm to like now a bandage or something that so that you can slowly make improvements.
I
So
see.
that would make
Oh,
sense for
pun
glasses.
intended.
Yeah, so that would make sense. Blue blockers is actually something that is interesting because I have these glasses here from a company that I really love because they're more like full spectrum, but they're really designed for indoor artificial lighting
Mhm.
because we do need blue light. It's super important for our health, and you probably teach that too. I mean, for
Mhm.
our hormones, for everything,
Right.
we do need that natural light. But indoors, nowadays, we spend a lot of time indoors, and the light, especially from computer screens, has a really high spike in blue and green versus the natural light, which has the full spectrum.
Right.
And the natural light, depending on the time of the day, it changes the right. So,
Yes.
so that's why maybe when we work at computers, we want that kind of blue blocking.
Mm.
What I usually do, I have software on my computer because I still want that bluish light from I'm at a window. I know the windows filter some light too, but I still want some kind of blue light so I feel more energized. But
Mhm.
that could be a good thing, some kind of blue blocking for either on the glasses or on the software on the screens.
Mhm.
And then you ask sunglasses, that's a longer discussion.
Okay,
So
let's have it though, because as you began by saying, glasses used to be, like nobody wanted to wear them, and now it's a fashion statement. So sometimes people are wearing them not because they need glasses, but they want to wear, sunglasses, or they want to wear some kind of eyeglass look. So let's hear about sunglasses.
So, I mean, light controls our whole biology, right? So now, and eyes are light receivers. So vision issues are always related to light, and especially those so-called refractive errors, which is nearsighted, farsighted. You touched on astigmatism.
Mhm.
When we are sensitive to light, how can we possibly see well, right? So I used to be super sensitive to light. I wore sunglasses on overcast days, and second I stepped out of the house, I was literally addicted to them. And so slowly weaning myself off sunglasses was absolutely crucial. And that is also what people have to do. Now, does it mean you should never wear sunglasses? No,
Mhm.
because let's say you're in extreme conditions. You're skiing, it's snow, it's bright blue sky, you're in the ocean, or you're
Mhm.
spending all day long, like for instance, gardeners or people that
Mhm.
spend all day outside. There is a period where you can actually, and especially if you move nowadays, I'm from Northern Europe, I live in Los Angeles. So if your biology is not based on your geographical situation, sorry, location,
Yes.
you will need at least some time of the day, you will need some kind of protection, or if you take any drugs or any kind of,
Mm,
you know, or maybe there's a condition where your pupils don't dilate, that's because our pupils are built in sunglasses. But
mm-hmm.
if they don't work, or you had atropine drops or any of those things, then obviously sunglasses are really important.
Mhm. But I think, as I remember in taking your class, there are exercises that we can do with the sun because it is true. The sun is fuel. The light is fuel for our cells, and to continuously block ourselves off from sunlight is like missing a meal for our cells.
Exactly. The light is as the vitamins in the cone cells in the eye. You might remember from school biology, you the listeners here, we have the cone cells and the rod cells. And the cone cells, I have a model of an eye over there. But basically, in the central part of our vision, the fovea, the yellow spot, is where we have only cone cells, and they are responsible for sharp vision, for color vision, and they need light.
Mm,
Without light, I mean, all photoreceptors need light, but they need a lot more light. Then the rod cells, which are the cells that we have on the periphery, we have
mhm,
obviously some also in the kind of the middle part of the retina, but the rod cells are the cells that give us night vision, right? They're very 100,000 times more light sensitive, but they only see black and white. So at night you don't see
mhm,
colors,
mhm.
and in the movement in the outer periphery you only see movement. You don't really see colors either. So both of these types of cells need light, but they have different requirements, and so I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense, but and it lends the question, or brings the question to my mind about, getting up with the sunlight, getting your face to the sunlight. Again, not only for the fuel source, but does that then almost exercise the cones so that they're getting what they need to start the day?
Yeah, it's
Mhm,
exactly those vitamins. And
mhm.
people are concerned about the blue light, but when we eat a healthy diet that is rich in lutein, zeaxanthin, and those they're actually yellow plant pigments. That's why it's called the yellow spot. We need
Mhm.
to get them from diet or high quality supplements. But when we take those, we actually absorb up to like 80% of the blue light. So nature has not built our eyes to be super, the sun is killing our vision. It's
Right.
all super smart, the system. And in fact, sunlight exposure, like UVA light, actually and creates dopamine. So
Mhm.
we have dopamine receptors in the retina, and they found in studies now that the exposure to the natural light is super important in preventing nearsightedness, which is like, so nearsightedness is like an elongation of the eyeball, and that
Mhm.
is now rampant, especially in the younger generations.
Yes.
So we need that light for the eyeball to actually grow in children and to the proper proportions.
Mhm. So you mentioned to children, and we talked about the fact that you and I started as children needing glasses, but we're seeing a lot more of sort of the millennial age, right? The 30 something needing glasses earlier than we would expect. It used to be that people would start thinking they needed glasses in their 50s or 60s, and
Right.
now they're needing them in their 30s and 40s. And some of it, I imagine, is due to the excessive computer screen. But my question to you is, what can these people do to mitigate the quote, air quotes, need for glasses in their 30s?
So you're specifically asking the 30s versus the children, right? So I mean, I
Yes.
think it's both important
Hmm.
because there is always emotional components. So nearsightedness is more connected to a state of fear versus farsightedness is more anger. Like farsighted is like pushing out there, like you don't want things close because farsighted, if you're farsighted, you see better far away and you have more blur close up and you might not let people really come close to you. Totally, that was totally me. Like, no. So there's more
Hmm.
pushing out. And with nearsightedness, it's more like you kind of feel safer in your little bubble and you
Hmm.
don't want to be out there. You're more like in your little safe space in your cocoon. So that could be the emotional. Maybe you're already a bookworm. Maybe you're already somebody who likes to kind of an introvert.
Hmm.
And so now you maybe get rewarded, especially as children, right? We get rewarded for studying. We don't get rewarded for climbing trees and not coming home and doing crazy things and falling from
Mm.
our bicycles. We
Right.
get rewarded for being good students and sitting still and reading books. And so in your 30s, I think it's really about, first of all, it's really connecting about noticing how your vision varies. That's the first thing I teach. And I
Okay.
call that strains and gains. Because based on our nervous system and our mood and our feelings and how well we slept and how well we ate and how much water we drank, all
Mhm.
these kind of factors, our hormones, based on all that, our vision is, it's kind of like just like our blood pressure, our heart rate, our blood sugar levels, it's changing. And so noticing when is it worse and when is it best? Like, so then you already get a clue. And most people might say, oh, with better light, it's better, or when I'm not at screens, but go deeper. I had a client, I give you an example that I thought was so brilliant. Most people say when they're going out into nature or their garden, their vision is like, they just love seeing that. So I had a
Yes.
client, she said, my vision is worse when I go in my garden. I'm like, really? Like, she said, well, I see all the weeds and it's all the work and it kind of stresses
Oh.
me
Oh,
out.
isn't that interesting? So it truly does end up being what is your emotional response to the environment in which you're existing.
Yeah, or the tasks that you're doing, right?
Mhm.
For instance, I'm a creative person. I don't like Excel spreadsheets. And when I was
Mhm.
doing my taxes on my bookkeeping, I was just like, independent from the fact it's on the screen and the distance, I was just like, oh, like I don't want to see this.
You literally don't wanna see it, and we
Exactly.
and we actually use some of this language, right? "I don't wanna see that," or "I can't see that." Oh, that is very interesting. Now, I know you have exercises that you recommend, and by the way, listeners, I will be putting into the show notes links to Claudia's sites and programs and so forth, because imagine that this is going to be intriguing to you, and I really encourage you to include this in your health and wellness protocols. But could you give us a sample example of an exercise that you might say, if you notice you're stressed and your vision is blurry, here's something you
Right.
might want to do.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. And I have a 10 habits guide that goes into more detail of these. So the number, like the first thing, and this stuff is super simple. Blink more. So when you blink more, your eyes are more lubricated. You prevent staring. So staring is when you have like the deer in the headlights and you're kind of
Mhm.
really making a hard effort to focus on something. So the
Mhm.
second we blink, it's like, it's kind of a little quick reboot.
Mhm.
It gives your eyes a teeny tiny micro mini break.
Mhm.
So blinking is one of those things where I found when people work on screens that people blink less,
Mhm.
every like maybe 2 to 3 times per minute, versus healthy blinking is every 2 seconds. And when we
Oh,
look at somebody in the
wow.
eye, have you ever done eye gazing with somebody and they don't blink? It's like creepy, right? It's like,
Yes, it's very unsettling. Yes, it is not a
no.
natural state to be staring.
So
Okay.
blinking more is a simple, because it's just like breathing. We do it automatically, thankfully, but we can also, think about it and make it better. So just like breathing, where we might want to like take a deep breath in and sigh it out and focus more on the belly breath versus the up here in the chest breathing.
Mhm.
Just like that, I used to put little stickers on my computer, blink, blink, blink. And now I cannot not do it. So eventually
Mhm.
this becomes a habit because your body feels so much, or your eyes feel so much better. So
Mhm.
that's one thing. If another thing is resting your eyes. So I'm standing right now, but I'm not standing all day.
Yeah.
Like we sleep, we sit down, we take breaks. So resting your eyes, some people might have heard the word cupping. We call it palming. And
Mhm.
basically, for the listeners, it's like you close your eyes and then you cover your closed eyes with your cupped hands.
Mhm.
And I don't have an elbow support right now, but you want something under your elbow so that you can really relax,
Okay.
and you cross your fingers over your forehead so that your nose is free and you can breathe easily.
Mhm.
And I'd like to take a few deep breaths, like just kind of like maybe just settling in, feeling your feet on the floor,
Mhm.
connecting with the earth. And what I like to do in palming so it's not just an exercise, actually, it's more a relax exercise if anything. But
A relax exercise,
the key piece is that in your mind, if you're not thinking, I had a client, she would always listen to CNN, right? I'm like, how is this relaxing you? So I'm going to stop right now. So I'm going to
Yes.
come out of it, and I will tell
Okay.
your listeners in a moment to come out of it. So assuming you're still calming, for instance,
Uh-huh.
but you want to bring your mind to a happy place,
Mm.
like something where you're like, oh yeah, that was so. It's imagined, it's real, it's a person, a place, a pet, whatever it is. But you immediately there's no effort to bring this up in your mind. You don't have to think about how does my cat have white ears or black, like whatever. It's just really easy, and you immediately get into this little mini vacation.
Mhm.
Because if your mind is stressed, your eyes and your system won't relax. So it's really
Mhm.
a rest for your eyes, but it's a way to learn to relax the eyes, because I find a lot of times people don't even know what it feels like when their eyes are relaxed. So, and then
Mhm.
you do it for like anywhere from like 30 seconds. So what, however long you want. I mean,
Mhm.
longer palming might be good if you're really tired
Mhm.
and your eyes are dry. I would even say 5 to 10 minutes or even longer,
Oh.
but whatever works for you. And then when you want to come out of it, you take your hand slowly away from your eyes and you leave your eyes closed, because you notice immediately how much more light comes
Mhm.
in through the closed eyelids. And when you're ready and you wait, maybe you wait 30 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute, whatever. When you're ready, you do 5 quick blinks, and then I like 5 gentle squeezes that,
Mhm.
stimulates the lacrimal glands. And so you might feel like your eyes are much more lubricated and you feel like really refreshed. So
Beautiful.
that's
And I think you answered the question, but I wanna ask it just for clarification. The purpose of the palming, is it to just create more dark, or is there something about the touch against your eyes as well that sort of
that is
helps
a
soothe?
fantastic question. So it's both. Basically, the nerve endings in the hands. I mean, we have energy, right? And sometimes people like to actually rub their hands together
Mhm.
first. I usually do that when my hands are cold. I don't really usually do that all the time.
Mhm.
But yeah, the nerve endings of the hands, it's just like the somatic, it's like the sense of, we know havening is a technique where you cross your arms and you stroke your upper arms with your hands. And it's just a way to really comfort yourself.
Mhm.
So, and it's also the darkness. So the darkness resets the rod cells, right? The cells, the night vision cells, the
Mhm.
optic nerve, the whole visual system can rest. And when I did it first, and I noticed many of my clients, initially it might be like gray patches or like the old TV snow, like some kind
Yeah.
of, and that is just basically neurons firing. That's could be after images, also could be after, if you were like outside in the sun, you might see some colors.
Mhm.
So, but the more, assuming you didn't have after images and you were not exposed to some kind of looking at a checkerboard where you will see it in reverse and for a while, it's like the photoreceptors, the
Yeah.
after images. When that's gone, it should be really black. And if you have any stress or strain, or there will be some kind of like patches or like whatever, like the old TV snow, and that gives you an
Fascinating.
indication how relaxed am I.
Okay.
So it's not about judging yourself, it's just tuning in like, "Hey, how does it feel today?"
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a powerful technique.
I want to repeat that. It's there is no judgment. This is observation and techniques for improvement. And there's no judgment if you choose to continue to wear your glasses, but maybe play with these techniques so that you can see how much do you really need it and how much have we become dependent upon it. And what I'm hearing you say is we can reverse that degree of need by performing these exercises and by taking the glasses off and not being so dependent upon them. Is that a correct? Is that correct?
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say is getting into weaker glasses. So most people don't understand or don't know. I think anybody farsighted probably understands that got their first pair of readers in their 40s or 50s. When you put the readers on to read the small print and you look up, you realize everything is blurry. And you know that whatever plus 1.5, whatever you have, is not that, those are not the strengths of glass that you need for seeing far away. You probably don't need anything for far away.
Mhm.
Now, diopters are always based on a distance. So nearsighted people, on the other hand, really kind of get glasses for distance correction.
Mhm.
And then they might work all day. And this, I see this with a lot of younger people, especially when they wear contacts. And now they're working all
Mm.
day long on the computer at 2 feet distance when their contacts or their glasses are measured for 20 feet and further.
Oh,
Now you're
interesting.
putting an excessive amount of strain on your eyes because you're way overcorrected for computer distance. So what
Oh.
happens usually is like, so even nearsighted people, they can do it, and at some point they get their 40s and 50s, and now that the visual system is like this, this is, I'm making too much effort, this is not working. And then they give you the bifocals or progressive glasses, and that's the number I would say absolutely no. Those glasses, and most people when I ask them say initially they were so disoriented, they fell, they tripped, their whole brain
Mhm.
was confused, because
Mhm.
these glasses now try to mimic, they assume when you look straight ahead, they look in the distance, and when you look down, you're reading. But
Mhm.
now that might be true when you're driving a car because you look far when you look in the distance, and when you look down, you kind of look at the dashboard.
Mhm.
But in real life, you go hiking or you walk down a flight of stairs, so you
Flight
look
of
down, but
stairs,
that's not reading distance, right? And
mhm.
so then I see all these kind of weird head postures where people try to like tilt their head back in order to have the
Mhm.
right, and that actually is connected to astigmatism creation. So the posture of the head.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, I can remember as a child, as I said, I got my first pair of glasses at age 4, and I remember any time that there was a progression in my prescription, I distinctly remember being afraid of going downstairs because I would feel as I was stepping through the stairs before I touched the stair. It was as though the stair were higher than it actually was. So it was a very disorienting experience.
And that is because you're farsighted. And when you're farsighted, so your astigmatism can be, even if you're farsighted, can be a negative astigmatism, a nearsighted one. Astigmatism is kind of complicated. And I think it's always funny that eye doctors talk about a football versus a basketball. And I'm happy to explain that more. But basically, your cornea is not evenly shaped like a dome, but there's a kind of, there's an area where it's flatter, and there's a curve or an axis where it's a little steeper. But this is the thing, when you're farsighted glasses are like a magnifying glass, right? We know that one
Mhm.
from readers.
Mhm.
And so the proportions, it distorts. So basically, it makes things larger, giving you the feeling that the steps are actually closer than they really are. And for a nearsighted person, it's the other way around. The stairs would suddenly look like they're further away
Mhm.
because the glass is kind of, because you're so nearsighted, the glass is actually project. It's
Push,
kind of
yeah.
really disorienting, to be
Right.
honest. Hmm.
Right, right. And of course, I'm curious, it's like what's happening in the brain? Because of course our vision is not our eyes, it's our
Exactly.
brain. So what have you learned and what can the audience, kind of consider about their brain health, which then affects their hormonal health and their neurotransmitter health and their ability to have a happy, healthy sleep-wake cycle. So what can you impart to us about be careful of your brain and when you're considering glasses or making these improvements to your vision.
So, I mean, the brain adjusts to anything good or bad, right? And that's the problem. So, the brain, when you first put progressive glasses on, the brain is like, oh no, I don't like this. Tell them
Mm,
off. And then the doctor says, don't worry, you get used to them. And of course, you do. So, we do, like you just beautifully said, we do see in the brain, the visual cortex and some other areas of the brain, but that's where we actually interpret the data that comes in for the retina. The retina is actually a part of the brain. It's the only place where we can look into the brain without surgery. So
mm,
that's why eye doctors can often, that's why I recommend ophthalmologists to everybody check their eyes, because they can find Lyme and diabetes and heart disease and all kinds of things in an eye exam before any lab. So that's different than an optometrist where
mm,
you get measured for glasses, but you do want to get your eye health and your overall health checked in an eye exam, but with dilated pupils. So coming back to the brain, and the brain is where we actually see, and the retina, the image is actually flipped upside, the wrong way. So then the brain interprets it. And so vision is really perception, right? We don't see everything. We
mm,
because we have focus. When I look for a mailbox, we see lots of mailboxes, but otherwise we might have never noticed them. Or
mhm,
so our attention is drawn by what we are thinking and what our drive is, what we want to accomplish. So the brain is very selective, because otherwise it would be really overwhelmed with all the stuff that's coming in
mhm,
all the time if we look at
mhm,
everything. So we see it, right? The cells receive the light from all the things around us, but the brain is very particular into like what things it focuses on, right? That's why, have you seen that movie, the basketball players, like how many, there's a white team and a black
oh
team,
yes, yes,
right?
yes,
And then
yes,
there's a
yes.
bear, there's a guy like dressed up as a bear, he's doing the moonwalk. And no, you don't see
You
it
don't
because you're
see
so
it.
focused.
Uh-huh. I have failed that test. I have to admit, I have failed that test
We
before and have
all
missed.
do, because we are focusing on how many
Mhm.
people are passing, so we don't pay attention to that. That's
To
what I'm
the
saying.
gorilla walking through the center. Yeah, that's very
Right.
funny. I forgot about that. Well, now
Yeah.
this has me
Many
question since
examples.
about the brain, since it's perception, would a dependency upon glasses create a proprioception issue where you kind of don't know exactly where you are in space because you become so dependent? So you've got to bump into the wall or need to hold on to the handle going down the stairs.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. this is something that blew my mind when I first learned it. So once we understand that our central vision, the foveal vision, the part of the vision that's it's the size of a pinhead, and once we understand that our sharpest point of vision is super, super tiny, even if you look at small print, you look at one letter, even if you see that one sharp, and of course the letter next to it is way sharper than the one at the end of the sentence, but
Mhm.
our vision is basically the central peripheral vision. The central vision is a super sharp, very small area. Then we have the near periphery, the middle periphery, and the far periphery. And obviously that goes for like vertical as well, right?
Mhm.
So, so when you don't wear glasses, you understand that if there's something on the side, if I want to see that well, I'm going to turn my head around and look at it straight on.
Mhm.
Glasses give you this kind of, first of all, they have the distortion we talked about, right? A far-sighted person, everything is magnified. Nearsighted person, everything is smaller. So there's a distortion in size. But also it gives you the sense that everything behind the glasses is sharp and everything outside is blurry just because we have faulty eyeballs. So this, in
Mhm.
reality, this is just human anatomy. Nobody has sharp vision in that peripheral vision. It's
Mhm.
impossible.
Mhm.
So you basically I teach, for instance, movement practices where you improve those little saccadic eye movements, which is just like breathing and blinking happen automatically, but we can improve them. And the faster they are, the more sharp snapshots you make, so to speak. So I see with people with glasses, there's often kind of a frozen, the eyes don't move much,
Mhm.
especially with astigmatism correction, because now you have only the center of the glass are sharp. So now the eyes are almost like not wanting to move at all.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So there is this false sensation, and that exactly what you described, especially with progressive glasses or bifocals. Now there is this loss of balance or this kind of bumping into things because also the glasses have a frame. Even if you frame this one, there is this difference between that distortion and the real world that
Mhm.
leads to the brain to be really confused 100%. And
Interesting.
again, the brain gets used to it, but it's not a good thing.
Right, exactly. Getting used to it just means you need the crutch all the more, but you haven't improved your brain by adding the crutch. You've actually
Right,
worsened your brain health.
exactly.
Oh, this is fascinating. So, what would you say are some absolute don'ts with regard to improving your eyesight, and what would you say are absolute do to add to your diet or lifestyle or whatever to improve your eyesight?
So don'ts are basically, so I see a couple of things. So some people have very strong prescription, let's say very nearsighted, like a -7 or higher. I'm going to throw my glasses away. I'm just going to live my life. I mean, I'm fine. I actually like the blur because sometimes we like the blur because we don't have to deal with stuff.
Mhm.
Now, I just talked about that central vision, right? That sharp central vision. So if you're like if you're either not wearing your glasses at all, and maybe you don't have to drive or do anything, or you're reducing them so much so that you have a blur at all times.
Mhm.
You now your brain is kind of checking out. So now you're basically zoning
Mm.
out because now nothing is sharp, and now that it's like it's almost like why you know make an effort to
Mm,
because I can't see it anyway. It's all blurry anyway. I'm blinded at that.
interesting.
I hear that all the time.
Uh-huh.
So that is one mistake. And the right thing to do would be to be like whatever distance you need. So getting reduced glasses for, let's say, one for computer if you need it, maybe one for this for driving. Let's say you need whatever as an example. But for some people, that might just be a quarter diopter reduced. For some people, it might be a little bit more.
Mm.
This also depends on your current glasses. Believe it or not, when give people an eye chart, we often find that they're really overprescribed by the eye doctor. Or
Interesting.
we find maybe they already have a cataract and they're they basically cannot be corrected by with glasses anymore and they're still driving. I'm like, okay, for driving, you have to wear your glasses from the eye doctor, but maybe for other things, gardening or cooking, you can
Mhm.
not wear glasses or you can wear reduced glasses. So we have to look at all that. So that's a big piece, doing as much as possible without glasses, but being safe and
Right.
also still noticing that wherever, when I look at your left eye, I see that better than your right eye. So being, even if it's a little blurry,
Okay.
noticing that where you look, you see best.
Okay.
That's absolutely important. So that's another thing I would say in terms of don'ts is like thinking, okay, I'm going to do whatever, 5, 10, 15 minutes of eye exercise. I actually don't do eye exercise. I don't like that word, but that's what
Oh,
people say.
okay. Okay.
It's more about like what I talked about in the beginning, noticing your strengths and gains. Notice what you notice, as Mary Morrissey said that at an event.
Mhm.
Notice those things and then tune in to like, how do I feel? And yes, there is practices. I have
Mhm.
movement practices. We do the palming and
Mhm.
call them exercise if you want. But really, it's about what I said earlier, noticing I'm not blinking. My eyes are dry. Now I'm reminding
Right.
myself throughout the day to blink more. And eventually, a lot of these things become habits.
Mhm.
So it's more about being like, yes, I recommend what I call a clear morning ritual where you have affirmations, where you go out, get some natural light, you do some palming, you do some massage. I'm big on body work, releasing
Mhm.
the tension in the body. So that's a clear morning ritual. But maybe you're the person who gets dry eyes. Maybe for you, palming your eyes for like 1 minute, 5 times a day is better,
Yes.
and learning to blink more. So really, it's about but Dr. Bates, the founder, who was an ophthalmologist in New York over 100 years ago, he was a Columbia professor. He was kind of the first ophthalmologist who kind of realized, why do some of my patients improve their vision? I wasn't taught that in medical school. So he got
Mhm.
really curious and he said something about 100 years ago. People say they don't have any time to improve their vision. They don't have any time. And he didn't call it exercise either, but you get the point.
Yes.
And he said, it's all about how are you using your eyes all day long? And I
Mhm.
want to say one thing about that. So last fall, I did a 3-day event on Zoom. 3 days, we were like 20, what was it? 24 hours over the 3 days on Zoom. We had about 200 participants and everybody improved their vision despite being on Zoom for like about 30 hours total,
Okay.
because you can use the screen well or you can use it not well. And the point is learning how to use your eyes well based on anatomy, regulating your nervous system, and then installing those kind of healthy habits. That's kind of the right way versus thinking, okay, I'm going to do an hour of exercise every morning.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day you're staring at the screen, like,
Right. Right. Right.
yeah,
That's perfect. Perfect response. Thank you. Because again, it really just comes back to returning to a level of awareness and self-care throughout the day. Not I'm going to go do these exercises from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then maybe 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. and stare at the screen, and,
right.
and, and not get any sunlight between that time.
Exactly.
And listeners, I mean, many of these listeners are people who are hoping to get pregnant and have a baby, and we want to be able to gaze into our baby's eyes and see our babies gazing back into our eyes, and maybe ideally not with glasses being an impediment between. So I think it's worth taking these little tips. Maybe put on your phone an alarm, a gentle sounding alarm every couple of hours as a reminder, if it's not part of your disciplines each day yet, but it'll, as you say, it'll get there. It becomes part of your activities of daily living to kind of blink or to palm or to put your face to the sun. I know that for
Right.
myself, my biggest takeaway was that I would put my glasses on first thing in the morning. I'd wake up, put my glasses on first thing in the morning. And then after working with you a little bit, I didn't. I said, I'm not going to put my glasses on first thing in the morning. I don't need my glasses to take the dog for a walk outside, to make my morning coffee. Yes, I have coffee in the morning. But just those little changes, I noticed that I felt good about taking sort of that little level of empowerment back, so that when I put my glasses on so that I could see a document, I was noticing the change and what the glasses were able to help so I could get through the document, but I didn't need them to brush my teeth. I didn't need them to take the dog for a walk. So maybe we can think about those kind of changes as well. Is there anything that I haven't asked about that you would like to say? Oh, you know what, before we wrap up, because I want to be respectful of your time and the listening audience's time, but I also want to make sure we're not leaving any pearls unsaid.
Ooh, that's such a good
Yeah,
question. There's so much more to say.
right.
I'm trying to
And thus
think
the
about,
show notes.
yeah, I think what's really important is, and that's something I do teach, is to understand your eyeglasses prescription, know what these numbers mean. A lot of times you mentioned astigmatism. Astigmatism is shown in the cylinder and the axis column of your prescription. And a lot of times, and my second cousin is an ophthalmologist, and she agrees with all this.
Mm,
So if you have a cylinder number that is less than one or less, you probably don't even notice the blurriness from the astigmatism. And most people that I work with have like a 0.25 or 0.5 or something
mhm.
minor, and that keeps your eyes kind of frozen in the like that's the first thing we remove. So understanding,
Interesting.
because they might tell you you have an astigmatism, it sounds like this horrible thing that has
Right.
to
It
be
sounds like a
fought against.
disease. Uh-huh.
And it's really just a minor thing. And when you think about the eyeball, this is kind of a final thing. We have six, I only have five for those of you watching here, not just listening. I have five fingers, but there's six outer muscles around the eye. And when we habitually, I talked about posture, right? That was the piece I
Mm,
wanted to talk about. When we habitually move the eyes in our socket, like left and right or up and down, people do that with reading glasses, have them at the bottom of the nose, and then look up
mhm,
and down without moving their head
mhm,
along. That's those muscles will be more used than other outer some of the other outer eye muscles. And so an optometrist discovered this connection. So if there's an unevenness in the outer eye muscles, and the cornea is an extension of the eyeball, right? It's basically the clear
mhm,
part of the eyeball. So if some of these muscles are tighter than others, it will bend your cornea kind of out of shape, or excessive eye rubbing, right? We might be
mhm,
rubbing ours. So those things can lead to astigmatism. And when I look at people's prescription, let's say you're right-handed and you always write on the right-hand side of your mouse, right? And now your left eye is always, you're glancing over, but your left eye is always further away from that focal point where you're
mhm,
writing. The
mhm,
left eye will be the one with the strongest cylinder. So,
mhm,
so basically, what we do want to do is we want to move our eye, not like a robot or like an owl, like the birds that cannot move the eyes in the socket,
mhm.
but think about moving your attention. So you want to, like, if I see something on the side, I'm not going to move my eyes to the side. I'm going to turn around and look at it straight on. So
I
when you have
see.
several monitors, like I do, think about moving, like moving your whole like head along. And it
Mhm,
doesn't mean we can't roll our eyes in the socket. That is good to stretch the muscles,
mhm.
but that's not how we actually see.
That's how we see.
Um, so
Interesting.
that
And
that
it makes sense. These are muscles. It's just like if you only worked out one bicep, you're gonna have, laxity on one side and tension on the other side. So makes perfect sense. But it's not something I ever think of. So I'm really happy to know these little tips. Really appreciate it. So yeah,
yeah,
so move your head to where you want to look.
yeah, basically moving your attention. And I think that's, I mean, we could talk about so many things. I also want people to know that vision always has a physical, but also an emotional and mental component. And astigmatism is connected to a sense of confusion, not really being sure who you are and who isn't as a kid, right? We might be really
Mhm.
confused. Maybe we get different messages. We kind of learn to be the good girl and to
Mhm.
kind of
Or the
adapt to our
black sheep.
environment, right? Here too. And so there's also this kind of, and I say this not as a clinical diet, but that kind of ADD where we can't
Mm,
focus, we jump around on tasks. And so
mhm,
for us, like doing a Pomodoro time, or doing something where we can learn to focus in small bits. And so sometimes vision problems and learning disabilities also get mixed up, where
mm,
a kid is maybe labeled ADHD when it's really could be a vision problem, or the other way around. So,
mhm,
so looking at these things always as like, what is the reason this is happening? You know, so it could be even be family relationships that
mhm,
create vision problems. So kind of like instead of slapping the band-aid on, which is the glasses, like really
right.
looking at like, what is it that could have caused me to feel this kind of stress in my life on the physical,
Mhm.
mental, emotional, maybe spiritual level, right? So I think that's really important.
Beautiful. So be curious.
Yes.
Don't just pop on those glasses, as pretty as they are these days.
You can always wear Plano. My older daughter doesn't need glasses. So she has a collection of, which I use for my Instagram videos.
Uh,
Like there's nothing in it. It's just glasses for the style, because that
uh-huh.
way you have the complete freedom not to need the crutches, but if you want to
Mhm.
use them as like a styling element,
Uh-huh.
then you can.
There you go. There you go. See, we have some good health tips and we've got some good fashion tips.
Yes.
Well, Claudia, thank you so very much. And listeners, once again, links to Claudia's courses and website and so forth will be in the show notes. So please, if any of this was intriguing to you, and I can't imagine that it's not, seek out her support and her knowledge. It's vast. And with that, I'm going to say we're going to close the class for now. And so Health University, we have class dismissed. Thank you.